Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from over half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. This is Joe Saponare of CyMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigmont of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. Hey everybody, it's our 9th anniversary. That's right, we've been recording Command Control Power every week since June 2013. For the freshest content, a peek behind the scenes, and more candid conversation about running our businesses, dealing with clients, fixing tough technical issues, and everything else you love about Command Control Power, we invite you to join us on Patreon so you don't miss any of this great content. Go to commandcontrolpower.com and click support. Pledge monthly, and you can instantly subscribe to the weekly patron-only shows right in your favorite podcast app. Command Control Power is brought to you commercial-free thanks to the support of our community. Our VIP supporters include Jason Detbarn of Adigy.com, Collide.co, John Brown of GroveTech.co, Watchman Monitoring, and Adam Angst of Tidbits Content Network. Thanks very much for supporting the show. This week, we are very pleased to be joined by Mike Bombich of Bombich Software, developer of Carbon Copy Cloner. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
So we've all been big fans of CCC for a number of years now. I had to check your website, but I understand it goes back as far as 2002. Is that right?
Yeah, January 18th. It's been a long, long time.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great piece of software we've all used and loved for a long time. So thanks for all the development effort and support effort you've put in over the years.
Yeah, it's been a labor of love. It's my first baby.
And I guess finally, it became a paid piece of software relatively recently, like in the last year or so.
About almost 3 years ago now.
Okay.
Before you take us to when you turned from a freemium kind of thing to paid software, take us to the beginning and what was the genesis of you wanting to write a piece of software like this?
Sure, yeah. I was actually just out of grad school, and I was doing a tech support job at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. And it was right around the time that Apple had transitioned from OS 9 to OS 10. And of course, being in education, we were a couple years behind the curve in terms of deployment. Plus, OS 10 was brand new, so there was a lot of reluctance to embrace it. But one of the first challenges that we saw was how you would actually deploy the system from one master machine to other systems en masse. There were lots of solutions to do this for Mac OS 9, and it was quite a bit simpler. But for OS 10, it had this Unixy stuff, and it looked weird and behaved weird, and there were things like ownership and permissions that apparently needed to be preserved. At the time, people actually believed that it couldn't be cloned, and I couldn't believe that could possibly be true. So I set out looking for the recipe to clone one system to another. And once I had figured out how to do it, I thought, boy, if I were to just create a little interface that could simplify some of these settings, we could actually make this easier to use on a broader scale. So I think it was shortly after 10.2 came out, I started putting the pieces together and put an interface on this functionality, and then posted it to Version Tracker. And I can still remember that first day. I remember the first day that I came up with a name. I was sitting in my home office with my wife, and we were kicking around names, and finally it just came to us, Carbon Copy Cloner. It was great use of alliteration, CCC. It sounded so cool, and it was very exciting. So then we posted it to Version Tracker one morning. Actually, I think it was on a lunch break. And it was just nerve-wracking. Anybody who has created something and pushed it out to the world, it's like as long as it's secret, nobody knows about it. There's, no nervousness. But that moment that you click submit, there's so many emotions and feelings that go into that. The first thing I thought was, somebody else has got the same solution and they're going to do it so much better and they're going to beat me to it. But I must have gotten a few hundred downloads just that first day.
Wow.
And from there, it just skyrocketed. I mean, it was just insane, the amount of feedback that we got, because it was actually the first cloning and backup software available for the Mac. So it was a pretty exciting time.
And were you looking for shareware donations at that time, or my recollection was that you weren't, that it was you could just use it freely without paying any license fee?
So I got to throw this out there. I have the worst business acumen of anybody. When I first published it, I really truly only wanted to save people's time. I had no concept of collecting revenue for it. And it was only after lots of people said, "Hey, I really want to, give you some money for this," that I even created a way for people to do that. I set up a PayPal account, and actually it was my wife's insistence too. If I was going to be spending time in the evenings on this, she wanted to, get a little something for it. So we set it up like that, and I decided to say, well, if you want to donate to the cause, go right ahead. And it was actually like that for a long time. About 10 years.
10 years, yeah. Wow.
Like that. I kind of thought that a lot of people were donating in terms of how many people were using it. But actually, after the transition, we found out that less than 1% of 1% of users were actually donating.
Wow. Yeah, no, I can probably see that. Now, up until that point, you really didn't have any kind of support team, right? It was pretty much just you and your wife for 10 years, correct? Or am I mistaken?
It was no, absolutely. It was just me, actually. Wow. I had an online forum where some other folks could contribute, but really there wasn't a lot of contributions from other people. There were a couple of people who were very active, but for the most part, it was just me, and that was a really big challenge. I mean, it was a chicken and egg scenario, which was really tough to solve. On one hand, I wanted to produce a new product and make a nice clean cut over to a commercial model. But on the other hand, the product was becoming more popular, more stable, and I was getting even more and more support requests. And finally, it was the release of OS X Lion that was absolutely crippling. And the reason for that was the OS was so bug-ridden that we got literally 120 support ticket. I got 120 support tickets a day.
Oh my goodness!
It was. I mean, it's terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. That was right after the initial release, and I had just introduced a new feature in which CCC could back up to a network volume, and it was there were so many changes in the OS in regards to how it interacted with network volumes that really kind of caught me off guard, and in general, it was just not working very well. The OS in general. So a lot of the support requests we get are product specific. How do I use Carbon Copy Cloner? But a lot of them are the OS is puking when it tries to install my helper tool, so I have to actually troubleshoot operating system issues. Mm-hmm. So that's when it became very clear I can't grow the company unless I start to charge for the software. And I also can't make great improvements to the software unless I grow the company.
Right. So, either abandon it or get paid for your time.
Yeah, and I mean it was the amount of effort and time I was putting into support on a daily basis. I was literally at the end of my rope. So
it wasn't like you and your wife were driving in the car and you said, "I know what we're going to do. We're going to start charging for this thing." It was just like you were almost forced into it.
Yeah,
because it was clear you loved the product, or was you were very dedicated to the product. So it was like, I can't move forward, and I don't want to abandon it. So
that's precisely it. I loved the product, and I felt that I couldn't do right by the product unless I made the company changes that were required to make it better. And my first hire was actually my wife. She has a background in HR, and she has much better business acumen than me. And I couldn't have grown the company without her. She started hiring support people, a sales guy, and a web guy. And after about 8 months of getting everyone ramped up, I could actually start development again. And that was just so amazing. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, we had a team meeting. I think that was when we hired one more person. Oh no, that was the web guy. And then I just completely tore the product apart. And that's when I started building CCC4. And it took me about 18 months. It was a lot of long days and nights. And with the help of the team, I was able to build a new product with a new architecture and make it exactly what I had always dreamed of offering to my users.
Wow. So it really is the fact that you took that leap of faith to start charging for the product, to make it a real, company per se, that we have to thank for, having such a more modern version in Carbon Copy Cloner 4.
Yeah. It was a leap of faith. And I felt like I had amassed a lot of, evidence that would support that leap of faith. So I felt pretty confident making that. And it was really not until after that first week that I realized I should have done it so many years ago.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Wow. So that does sound, I really love the idea of the chicken and egg problem of like, you didn't feel comfortable really charging for the software without having the full support system in place. But of course you can't really have a full support system in place until you're making some real money from the software. So,
yeah.
And then being forced into just moving forward with it.
The average business guy would go to venture capital. Right. Like I said, I approached this as I'm an engineer and I had a product and a market that wanted the product, and I just needed somebody who could help build the company, and I didn't have that expertise. No one person has all of the pieces to the puzzle. So
I just find it so interesting that once you decided to charge, I guess, is when you realized, because I was going to say initially, wow, that's great that people started offering to donate money to the business or to the product because they thought so well of it. And then you come to find that only 1% of 1% of the people were actually paying for the product.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you find that out when you truly start charging. And
right.
That's just incredible.
Yep. And I got a lot of positive feedback from the people that had donated. It certainly helped that, all the way back to January 2002, I have a record of everyone that donated, and I offered a free license for the people that have donated, even if it was 10 years ago and if it was, $2. And there were plenty of those.
That's cool.
But it only seemed right to reward the people who had the faith to kind of invest in the product and give that back to them.
You want to encourage that behavior too for other developers, I'm sure. Like, you want to give people a little bit of an incentive to continue to support their, local independent shareware dealer kind of thing.
Yes, but at the same time, I want to announce to the world, if you are in this position, you should charge for your software.
Definitely.
Absolutely. If you think there's value in your software, charge for it. Absolutely charge for it. That's one change I would make if I could redo everything.
I just remember seeing the banner that says, "Do you think Carbon Copy Cloner saves your bacon?"
Right.
Which is so awesome.
Banner. I loved making that, and it sticks its little tongue out with the money on it. It was
so,
hilarious.
Mike, where did you was most of the stuff that you learned about Unix when they came out with OS 10, and then you were saying 10.2 really was when you got this product going? Did you just learn it from manuals? I mean, were you self-taught in the Unix OS, or did you actually go to computer science school for this?
Right. I had absolutely no formal training in computer science.
Wow.
I took one course I took Intro to C++ in college.
Yeah. But you found that you just had a natural aptitude for it.
Yeah. I played a lot with AppleScript back in the day. And I really I loved creating stuff, and I found that this was a great medium. As a carpenter, I'm terrible. In the physical world, I cannot build things very well. But in this world, you just see all of the working materials, and you can put the pieces together and make cool stuff. And I felt like an artist in this realm, and you can really just build great things. So yeah, I'm completely self-taught. I actually have a master's in biology. I studied aquatic ecology.
Oh.
So not a lot related to what I do now. I still enjoy it, but yeah, I sat down and learned Objective-C, and I went to Apple's developer conferences. numerous times and just sat down and worked with it.
And you worked for Apple for a number of years, right?
Yeah, I worked for Apple for 8 years. I actually joined Apple, about 5 months after I released Carbon Copy Cloner. And it's funny, my father-in-law gave me the Bombich.com domain as a birthday present. Kind of just stuck my software on there and some tips and tricks, hoping to get my name out, because I did ultimately want to work for Apple. I thought that would be a great job. And it certainly worked. It got Apple's attention, and my name was out there, and I got snatched up after just 5 months. So it was a pretty exciting time, quite a whirlwind. And I spent 8 years at Apple, doing not development related stuff. I actually worked in the education sales division. And after 8 years, I decided that my true passion was not sales; it was creating things. And aside from doing CCC, I'd been working on some other projects, and I decided what I really want to do is give all of my effort to Carbon Copy Cloner and see what I can do. Because of everything that I created, I felt it was the most popular and the most widely used piece of software. I made a lot of very customized solutions that wouldn't be very useful to the average consumer.
I think what really resonates with Carbon Copy Cloner for people is it has that simplicity of use. So it doesn't intimidate the person who is trying to grok it for the first time. But then for the person who's a little bit more sophisticated, you can get very, very granular with it. And that's what we all appreciate as consultants, that we can really dial it in and have it do whatever we wanted to do. And that was even right from the beginning. So, and certainly all the new improvements we appreciate immensely, but I think that's really the appeal.
Yeah, I'm a user too, and so is Rob, my main support guy, and every once in a while we'll just have an epiphany and think, oh man, if I could just do this one little change, a lot of very technical people would love this, like the ability to exclude extended attributes. It's little things like that the more advanced people love. My favorite one is task chaining, where you can have one task kick off another task when it's done. It's just a much cleaner, simpler way to set up a set of backup tasks if you have, say, multiple tasks that write to the same disk. You don't want them to all run at the same time because they'll all run slower. But you don't want to set them up for like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, because then it takes 3 hours to do something that might only take 7 minutes if you say just do this one, then this one, then this one. So I love adding that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, it's a smart feature. You like you said, all you want to do is wait until the first one finishes and then start the second one right away. So that's perfect solution there. And a lot of this stuff is buried, one level away from the average user. So you have the advanced settings, where you can do things like tweak the default settings. But, for most users, they just like see, okay, pick the source, pick the destination and go. And it's really straightforward. It does the right thing in, 99.9% of the cases. So it's great, certainly fantastic piece of software. I think what got me hooked was, number one, it's free to download, it still is, but even going way back, it was just free. So you could install it on a client machine and, and let it run. And number two, it had email notifications. So love to be able to find out when something doesn't work right. Because, the client's not going to tell you about the error message for months on end.
Right.
And then number three, this probably should be number one, but it just works every time. It's just so reliable. So that just seals the deal for me. And, circling back to like the business acumen or lack thereof, I think that it's actually a pretty smart approach to, kind of put it out there and let people just see how good it is. And, once you built up such a big audience for it, you started charging for it and everybody was just happy to pay by that point.
Yeah. Having especially the 30-day trial in which you can try every aspect of it, that I think is critical. I never want somebody to, pony up $40 for something that they can only try, like part of the good stuff.
Right, being locked out of features, for sure.
Yeah.
And not to speak disparagingly about other competitive pieces of software that are out there, but I've always sort of scratched my head and just wondered why people even considered some of the other options that were out there, because your product is just so infinitely better, heads and shoulders, even if you take it down to its very, very simple tasks that you want it to do. And you don't have, you don't need to get really granular. It's still just email notifications. Most of or a lot of the major competitors out there don't even do that. So it's extremely well thought out, well designed. And I think what's nice about it is interface changed a little bit with the new version 4, but for many years it remained the same. And that was sort of refreshing as well, because people weren't scared off by something that looked radically different.
Oh yeah. I mean, I tell you, every time I make any interface change, I hear about it.
I'm sure.
So I definitely made it my goal, to avoid posing a huge learning curve for the folks that have been using it for a long time. With version 4, I really had no choice. There were so many changes that I needed to make that I really had to kind of tear it down. But I actually, didn't think that I was going to be the guy that could make all of these improvements alone. And I actually went to a consulting firm that helped me design the interface. And I think they did a fantastic job. It's the levels of, I can't remember the term that they use, but it's like levels of exposure. You've got, when you first open it, you've got the most basic and simple set of settings that 80+% of the users are going to need, and that's all they need, and that's what they see. They're not overwhelmed with the kitchen sink. But with a single click here and there, you can start exposing this additional functionality, and you can do it at your own pace and without getting overwhelmed. And I love the way that they pulled that off. There's still some changes that I want to make, and we're actually making several changes for 4.1 that I can't wait to share. But it came off really well. And there's definitely some learning curves for the people that are coming from 3.5. And boy, did we hear about it. We're addressing most of those. And we're also actually introducing a new, even more simplified version of the settings. It's literally source destination clone. All of the settings stripped away, because we've got a subset of people who literally that's all they want to do, and they don't want it to be more complex. They actually think that version 4 was more complex than version 3. And when we thought about it, if that's all you wanted to do for that particular user, it actually is a little bit more complex. But for most people, I think that the things that you gain by combining, say, the scheduling window and the main window are a huge bonus.
Oh yeah, there's no question. I mean, it's just it makes a lot more sense logically, and I think you really have struck a great balance between like just what works for 80% of people and the power that you expose for everybody else. One click away. So it's a great interface, big improvement for sure.
So would the idea though to have this simpler solution be a separate download for, I don't know, Carbon Copy Cloner or Simple Interface versus the more advanced settings?
No, you choose Simple Mode from the Carbon Copy Cloner menu. It just opens up a new window.
Nice.
Yeah, we haven't fleshed out all of the details yet, but my goal is to have one product. It's capable of all of these things, but having multiple downloads, that would be a pain to deal with.
When 4 was released, it made total sense. It was a lot more visual, and it's like, oh, great, and it just really helped our sort of workflow in executing the program and just working with it on client sites right away. I think we all responded to it really positively.
Mike, what's the most fun part or best part about developing software? What do you enjoy the most out of that?
I would say it's instant gratification, seeing a new feature or new functionality just kind of materialize in front of your eyes. And that's actually the reason I left biology. When I was in graduate school, I had this huge project that I'd been working on for a couple of years, and it just failed miserably. And we put so much time and effort into it. And to work so long on something like that and never get an opportunity to see success or any result is so disappointing. But with software development, I can sit down and in like even 5 minutes do something that's just so cool. And it's not always like that. Sometimes, you spend 5 days on something and you can't seem to figure it out. But when you can sit down and move some widgets around and wire things up on the back end and make it do something cool, automate a task that takes 5 minutes to do, and you can do it with one click. That's the exciting part for me. I'm an efficiency geek. My whole life, everything I do within my life, I try and figure out the most efficient way to do it. And with software development, finding ways to make everything I do on my computer more efficient, I just love it.
There's that famous Steve Jobs quote about, I think it was in the development of the Macintosh. It was some process was taking extra seconds or whatever, and he was trying to motivate his engineers to shave some seconds off of this process, and they were like, come on, it's like we've worked so hard, it's already far enough along, and there's only so much we can do. And he was saying the motivation is like if you save seconds per instance, and 1 million people have a Mac, that equates to like X number of lifetimes. And, so it's like, if you can save, and it's just, I think it puts it in perspective. If you're in that realm of, working on something that helps people automate something that otherwise they were wasting time on, you really do make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah. Time or worry. In a lot of cases, if you're flying without a backup, it's like driving without a seatbelt.
Right.
You can go fine for a while, but at some point you're going to need that, and you're going to regret not having it. And if you have it and it's just working, and you get this nice little notification that says that it worked, and you can boot from it and test it, then you can go about your life knowing that you're not going to lose your childhood photos is the one that always comes up. I would be devastated if I lost that. And it's funny, I actually have had a couple occasions where I've had to use CCC myself, and sometimes you can get so caught up in developing the solution and meeting customer requests and things like that. But when you actually have to use it yourself, it's very gratifying. I migrated to a new system once, and I had to do some cloning back and forth, and the whole thing, actually it wasn't migrating, it was upgrading the OS. The whole thing took me like an hour and a half, and I was like, I can't believe it actually went that fast. That was just incredible. And then another time I had left my laptop at a hotel, and Monday morning comes around and I'm like, hey, where is it? And I took my backup disk and I plugged it into one of my test systems and started working. And fortunately, the laptop wasn't stolen and I got it shipped back to me. But for those 2 days where my laptop was in transit, I was sitting there working from my bootable backup, and I thought, wow, this is a pretty great solution.
I made that.
That was me.
Look, mom, no hands.
In just talking with you in the last few minutes, it's infinitely clear with the passion that I can hear it in your voice, the passion that you have behind the product, how this came to be such a perfect product in so many ways. So it's really, I think, amazing to just talk to a developer and listen to you talk about how this came to be and understanding the real fire that created this for you. And just the fact that you're also talking about stories, how you used it yourself. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. But I mean, it is great. I mean, it has helped us all as consultants in many ways. And I find it fascinating just talking to you, hearing your story behind this and understanding the passion and what came to be. So this is cool stuff, man.
Yeah. I absolutely love the product. I'm the first person to love the product. There was one product I once created for my wife, but this one was definitely something that I created for myself, and wanted to share it, and am delighted to share it with the world.
And of course, if you haven't purchased Carbon Copy Cloner before, you can go to carboncopycloner.com or bombich.com, and it's $39.99. And if you have a previous version, at least 3.5, you get 50% off. So it would only be $19.99 One of the features that I absolutely love with the new version, of course, is the being able to clone the recovery partitions. It's just so it's done so well. It's so smart, and it's just fantastic, just the way that works.
That's actually an example of one place where I looked, is there any way I can simplify this yet further? And I actually looked at it from the perspective of the more technical user to figure out how I could simplify this and make it more reliable. And in version 4, the one thing that's now gone, there was a pop-up menu asking what version of the OS do you want to apply to this Recovery HD? Mm-hmm. And I realized if I just take the Recovery HD task and put it at the end, then I know what OS I need. I need the one that matches the OS on the backup disk.
That's smart. Rather than doing it in order on the partition map, right? You're just doing it in more of a sensible order.
Right. And I also create an archive of the Recovery HD that's associated with the source, and that's created on the source and then copied to the destination. So at the end of the backup task, I actually have an archive of the Recovery HD that's associated with the disk that I just backed up. And that's what I look to first.
Yeah, that's really smart too. When you go into that recovery section and you select the destination that now has the backup, having been cloned to it, but doesn't have the recovery partition. And you just, it knows that it already has a copy of the recovery partition, the appropriate one from the original source disk, like you described being archived there. So it's really smart.
The other thing where it really helps is people who manage lots of master machines. If you've got lots of master backups, for example, you got your Mac Minis, your laptops, and each one of them has its own unique type of recovery volume. So if you have these master images, you don't have to keep track of the recovery HDs separately. It's part of the master image.
So you can always go to that now destination that has the clone on it, and you have a copy of the recovery partition right on there in an archive.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. Very smart.
We discussed it just a little bit in the pre-show. You would like to make an effort to reach out to Apple consultants who might be interested in partnering with your product as being involved in the reseller program, but also perhaps maybe providing some additional support.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we put together a reseller program. It's available at cccreseller.com. There's a little application process. What we'd like to do is expand the program basically in the application procedure to make a way for consultants to say, I am available to provide technical support on a consulting basis. Because what we'd like to do, we don't have a huge team here. We've got 3 people that can provide technical support, and we've got a fair amount of technical expertise in many applications. But there's some very high-end applications like Final Cut Pro, Logic, Adobe Lightroom, things like that, Xand deployments, where it would be beneficial for some customers if they're looking for advice on how to set up a backup procedure or how best to design their backup scenario. It'd be great if we could say, here's a list of folks who have that kind of expertise and are willing to provide consultative technical support. We would love to point people to those types of resources. So what we're thinking of doing is expanding our reseller program to have the ability to say, yes, I have this expertise and I'm willing to provide technical support. And then we could either point customers individually to folks or point them to a list where they could, see who provides, who has what kind of expertise and can provide that kind of technical support.
So this is a great opportunity for consultants to sign up for the reseller program, not only to distribute licenses to their clients, but also to then be put on this roster of consultants that are available to consult with your customers or other customers of Carbon Copy Cloner who may need a little bit more help beyond what you guys provide, which is excellent support through email and other means, to be able to then just bill for their consulting services to help clients set up really specific workflows, to back up really specific pieces of software and that kind of thing. And you may get new clients out of it, at least a new gig out of it. So
Right.
It sounds like
Precisely.
the first step would be for interested consultants to sign up at cccreseller.com to become resellers, and then fill out those that form and include your information, and then you'll, I guess, get in touch with further info when this program rolls out.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, I've been signed up since you guys started offering this reseller program, which is great because I can purchase licenses in advance at a very nice discount, and then just simply resell them to my clients when we need them. So we have the license, we have a little redemption code, we go into a form on that same site and generate the license key for the client, as needed. So it's actually licensed to the client, and you just I invoice for it along with the work that I'm doing. So it's a really convenient, easy to use system.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how we designed it.
I think you'll find a lot of consultants in our field that'll be willing to go with this program and support the product that they've already been working with and they kind of feel well versed in. So this is a perfect marriage of experts in our field that are already working with your company. I think this is an exciting development for you guys.
Yeah, and I love working with more technical customers, folks who are willing to dig into technical issues. So, if we ever needed to provide technical assistance to a customer, that I would love those opportunities.
Yeah, we can kind of translate from client speak, into I guess developer speak, be the go-between.
Yeah.
But you guys have always provided great support. I mean, I've emailed about, I think, just one issue that I can think of recently, which was a couple months ago. Let's see, I had a disk that I needed to rebuild with Disk Warrior. And then I needed to clone the preview because I didn't want to replace it. I think the disk was failing. So I wanted to, rebuild the disk directory with Disk Warrior and then clone the Disk Warrior preview to like just an external drive. And, Carbon Copy Cloner gave me an error about, we don't want to proceed with this because basically both of these disks have the same, I guess it's the UUID, the
Right.
clone, obviously, the Disk Warrior preview and the original disk. And I emailed you guys about that, and you actually responded within like an hour, and you said, "I'm working on this right now." And actually,
I remember that. Yeah.
And he said, actually, there are 3 disks with that same UUID, and you kind of explained the situation. So it made a lot of sense to me, and I had a workaround. And so it's just great to know like that somebody's on the other end of that email when you do submit a question like that in the heat of trying to solve a problem for a client. And so it's great that you're out there providing that support.
I love those complex challenges every once in a while. I don't like them, 20 a day, but
Yeah, I was thinking about it from your perspective. It's like, how do you, so in that situation, like, how do you actually definitively identify? I mean, it certainly makes sense to me looking at the graphical user interface. Like, well, I know that has a little picture of the Disk Warrior icon, and this one is the, internal disk. But like, under the hood, how does the software know? Like, if it's going by UUID and they happen to use the same one because that's part of the, Disk Warrior, preview, like, what are you supposed to do about it? So that's where you get into one of those creative, challenges, I guess, to solve that.
yeah, that one was tricky because there aren't a lot of characteristics of a volume that you can rely on to be unique across the system at that time, and also unique across unmounts and remounts. Like even the device identifier, the device ID, that changes. If you change the order in which you attach devices, that's not unique.
The dev / disk 0 slice 2 or whatever, that kind of
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah. And then the mount point could change if you had 2 volumes with the same name and you attach them in different orders. So that's not reliable. And for the Disk Warrior preview, I was able to make a specific exception for that because I found that the media, I think it was the median name, was always DWPR or something like that. So I actually excluded one of the read-only original source that was mounted and locked that had a different media name. So I just didn't include that in my list. And then there were 2 left, and I found a nice, convenient, very reliable way to always pick the right one. And as long as I can do that, if it's got the same UUID, it's not a big deal. But there aren't a lot of cases where, two disks have the same UUID, and there's some reliable way to positively identify it. So that's why the error comes up in the first place. But yeah, I was excited that I could fix that for the disk warrior preview, because I think that's probably a pretty common scenario
for guys like us, for sure, for consultants.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually very reassuring when you get an error like that. Like it refuses to proceed because it's not quite sure of what the state is. So it's like it's not going to get you into trouble or get itself into trouble. It waits and. And so it's very reassuring that you're aware of that, and that when you solve it in a pretty definitive way.
Yeah.
And Mike, one more thing that I know is included with Carbon Copy Cloner that I have not had a chance to use very much is you have a command line utility. You can actually use most of the functionality right on the command line. Is that right?
Yeah, this was one of my favorite little pet features that I had always wanted to add to CCC, and it actually helps a lot with the automation of our QA procedures. Is that you can call specific tasks from the command line. There's a little CCC command line utility included in the CCC application bundle, and we added a bunch of features to it. It can print a schedule of all your tasks. It can run a specific task. It can stop all tasks. It can print task history. I even added a little thing that would output task status. So if you use something like Geek Tool, you could grep this task status and pipe it out to Geek Tool, and it would put that status right there on your desktop. So that was a fun little treat that I added for the more advanced users, folks that want to call their tasks from the command line. The other thing that it allows people to do is if you want to run tasks more frequently than an hour, which isn't too common, but there's a few people that want to do that. You could actually write a little script that could, call the task, delay 5 minutes, call the task again, and do that as many times as you like.
You could have it blink your lights when the task is finished if you're into the home automation side of things.
You sure could.
And so I imagine it sounds like you would actually just create the task using the GUI, and then you're talking about just basically running it and checking status and stuff like that on the command line.
Yeah, the one thing that I avoided was having the command line utility make modifications to tasks, because there's so many gotchas with task configuration. I wouldn't want somebody, for example, to be able to create a task that would wipe out the destination with absolutely no warning. So for all of the task configuration stuff, the GUI has the opportunity to correctly convey any warnings or things like that. So the command line utility is mostly for monitoring and starting and stopping tasks, things like that.
I imagine that's probably how Watchman monitoring ties in. They have all these great plugins for being able to just know the status of your various systems and tasks and things like that. So I imagine that's probably what they're doing, just getting a full status and then parsing it and giving us the nice clean output from that.
Yeah, and actually they were one of the folks that I had in mind when I created it, because previously they'd been grepping the log, and the log's contents, that's entirely for debugging and completely subject to change. I mean, even my error codes aren't necessarily consistent from one version to the next. So the command line utility I designed specifically in mind with folks like that in mind, and also with script compatibility in mind. So if I were to ever change the command line syntax, for example, there's a version number that would change so that you could check for that.
Interesting. So that actually gave you the impetus to finally develop that command line tool that you had always wanted to include.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plus, I wanted it myself.
Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say.
Yep.
Well, that's great. That's another nice feature. Just an added bonus for the other sort of maybe 10% or 1% that want to use that.
One.
But yeah, but the ones that want it, I'm sure that's they really want it. So that's a great thing that you guys provide.
Mike, do you have any plans as this product sort of matures and there will probably be not as many features that you'll need to add going forward, coming out with other products under your name?
I don't know. I've got a long list of features. Maybe. It's certainly on the table. That's something that our team has discussed internally. There's always the chance that Apple's next major OS comes out and they just whack off our heads and our product has no relevance or doesn't work. That's the fear that Apple instills in all developers.
You get Sherlock, right?
Sherlock.
Yes. So yeah, we want to diversify.
But nothing in the labs right now that's set for release
No.
next week.
So another way to pry into that answer, to ask that question a different way, is what's something that you would love to see another developer create? Software that's missing out there.
Right. What itch do you need scratched next?
Right.
Boy, this is going to sound ludicrous, but I don't like to use my computer.
I feel you.
When I'm not working, I am fishing. I'm fishing or cooking, and
Nice.
I'll use an iPad to hold my recipes, but I don't want to have anything to do with technology when I'm not working. So I use my computer for work, and that's really just about it. Which I know it sounds completely crazy, but I'm
Not
just
that-
Not at all.
No, not crazy.
So my wife certainly uses probably 10 times as many applications as I do. I just don't really find myself wanting to do new different things on my Mac. And it feels so weird saying that, but I don't know. There's so much more to life than computers. Sometimes you just got to step out of the office and look at the sunshine.
How about a sunshine app?
Yeah, there you go. I'm kind of into home automation. So as far as that's concerned, that would be I'm kind of excited about what Apple has,
HomeKit and everything.
Yeah, and mostly what other developers are going to develop around that.
Yeah, the Philips Hue is a great lighting automation. I like Indigo from Perceptive Automation on the Mac to automate Insteon based devices. I
use Indigo extensively. I've got these cool little interfaces set up for my my lights, and I'm such a nerd. I had a moisture problem in my attic, and I put a fan up there, and it would be on or off depending on temperature and humidity. And I found that to be woefully inadequate because it could be pouring outside in 100% humidity, and the fan's on. So I put a temperature and humidity sensor in the attic and outside, and derived this formula and collected data and figured out the optimum time to turn on the fan, turn off the fan. And then I, of course, had to load the data into a database and graph it because it looked cool. And all of it's available from a click in my Indigo.
That's pretty cool. You got to talk to Sam's colleague Craig about that. I know Craig's into that, right, Sam?
Yeah.
That sounds like a pretty great use for automation. My question is: do you ever have disagreements about how the lighting works with your wife?
No, but I annoy the heck out of my kids when I turn the lights on in the family when they're there and I'm not there. And it also bugs my son when he comes home and leaves the back door open, and he comes into my office to say hi, and I'm like, "Hey, little buddy, you left the back door open."
Big brother watching.
You need to automate that door closing.
Yeah, there you go. You get some kind of solenoid to shut the door or something. Well, this has been great. Great to get to know you better, Mike, and to learn more about the history of Carbon Copy Cloner and your other interests these days. So, I mean, I think we can definitely direct a lot of our listeners to cccreseller.com to sign up. And I mean, I'm sure as an Apple consultant, you are all already using Carbon Copy Cloner. So why not, sign up for the reseller program, buy some licenses, and be ready to resell them to your clients for a little bit of commission on that sale, and to make it your life easier and their life easier. And then also to, potentially sign up for this new program, which I guess we're calling, do you have a name for this new kind of, consulting side of things, Mike?
No, just started up tonight. So
Sweet. Yeah, you heard it here first.
Yeah, you did. We probably won't have a separate name for it. It'll probably just be a matter of saying I'm up for technical support, and I can imagine having maybe a list on our website that with the consultant's permission, of course, that would say these folks provide technical support in these particular areas of expertise. Whether we come up with a name for that, I don't know. I'm not a great name comer up with her.
Came up with carbon copy cloner.
Yep, that's my one hit wonder. Boy, everything is awful for me, but I'll kick it around on the team tomorrow, and we'll go from there.
And of course, if you listen to the show and you're not an Apple consultant and you're not using Carbon Copy Cloner, we encourage you to download it. You can use it for 30 days with no features restricted, completely unlocked, and check it out and start using it, because you'll find that by far, it's just head and shoulders above the rest. And we've been big fans for years, and we encourage you to come aboard and check them out.
Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on the show.
Command Control Power wouldn't exist without the support of our community. Special thanks to the following community members whose strong monthly support has sustained us for all these years: Ryan Gowdy, CoreCompetent.com, Weldon Dodd, Kanji.io, Richard Wingfield, EnvisionDesign.net, Adam Rice, AskAdam.io, Mac Admins Podcast, podcast.macadmins.org, Tim Nyberg, TheMacGuys.com, Michael Thompson, Origin84.com, Matthew Waples, Waples.net, Tom Puls, BoxIT.tech, Jerome Potters, PITPro.nl, Steve Sorbo, MacSOS.biz, Andy Espo, CallAndy.com, and Nate Sinall, WeAreAScout.com. Thank you all very much, and thanks to our patrons at every level of support. If you enjoy the show, we really would love your support. And if you already support us and can increase your monthly pledge, we really do find that encouraging. CommandControlPower.com and click support. Thanks very much for listening and for supporting the show.
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on